Okay.
Yeah, the camera just died.
All right.
Like,
So,
out of battery.
my name is Berké. I just want to thank everybody for this opportunity to share research that is very important to me, something that I'm very passionate about. The title of my research program is The Internal Gym, Engaging Intrinsic and Extrinsic Variables of Exercise Motivation and Exercise Self-Efficacy. But before I get into the nuts and bolts of my research project, there's definitely a lot of information. The first thing that I want to do is lay the groundwork with a paradox. So, a 2013 National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey, also known as NAMES, reported that obesity in the nation had risen to 35%. This is a 10% increase from the past decade. Moreover, an estimated 69% of Americans are clinically overweight. Every year, roughly $90 billion are spent on direct health care costs based on inactivity and obesity in our country alone. Now, this is not new information. We're all aware of this epidemic in our country as well as globally. However, here's the paradox. Pretty much, while the health industry and obesity is soaring, while health and obesity is increasing significantly, we're also noticing that the health industry is booming. The IHRSA has currently estimated that a revenue of $22.4 billion was taken in on the health and fitness industry alone. This is a 7% increase from 2010. And to put it in context, it's a 244% increase from 1993. So we might ask ourselves, as exercise and health consciousness have increased so drastically in recent decades, why is it that this trend is not equating to healthier people? As a visual aid, let's take a look at the right side of the board. We'll notice that obesity over the past 2 decades has gone from 20.5% to 35%, an increase of 15% over 2 decades. Within the exact same time, what we'll notice is that the health industry has grown significantly bigger. Now, this is the paradox. How does an industry predicated on health and fitness and activity thrive in a society that is going more and more inactive and sick? Why are we pouring money into things that are not giving us the results that we want? Before we go into finding the solution, we first must understand the problem. My theory, simply put, is not that people are failing to go to the gym, but rather they're failing to stay in the gym and remain physically active. This is the premise of my research. One concept that attempts to explain this enigma is exercise attrition. Exercise attrition is when somebody pretty much begins an exercise program and then over time falls off the bandwagon. We can either have been experiencers of this, or we may know somebody who has. Now, scholars surmise that many individuals who are overweight or obese at some time in their life are consistently engaged in exercise only to discontinue after a few months. Over the last 30 years, statistics have consistently indicated that the attrition rate of exercise regimens increases to 60% within the first 6 months. Most of this happens within the first 3 months. Again, this tells us that the issue is not one of enticing people to want to be fit, but motivating them to stay fit. My research attempts to discover more effective ways to motivate people to maintain a consistent exercise regimen. Now, when speaking of motivation, we're not just speaking of one type. The 2 types that I'll be talking about are intrinsic and extrinsic motivators. As defined by researchers Ryan and Edward Deci, intrinsic behaviors are those that are performed for the satisfaction that one enjoys in engaging in the behavior itself, while extrinsic motivators are motivations for doing something specifically for an outcome, a reward, something that is not dedicated to the activity itself. Now, much research has been produced explaining the power of intrinsic motivation on exercise adherence and the deterring effects of intrinsic motivation. However, little is found on how these 2 different motivations interplay in a way to create an environment that facilitates exercise consistency. This is where my research comes in. My research aims to identify which external and internal variables are at play during exercise and post-exercise discussions and how they affect motivation. I'm particularly interested in ways that these motivations can be used to improve autonomy, consistency, and also physical and psychological well-being. Now, to create this methodology to answer these questions, my plan was to set up an exercise research program involving participants who would engage in an 8-week training course. Now, before training would begin, each participant would have to fill out a questionnaire which would determine whether they were more prone towards intrinsic or extrinsic motivators. And from that point, they were then put into 2 separate cohorts. Participants in cohort 1 would be training in a personal training facility, while participants in cohort 2 would be training in a CrossFit training facility. Now, from these cohorts, we created a 3rd cohort, This was the experimental group. And this third experimental cohort would be comprised of half participants from cohort 1 and cohort 2. In addition to training, this group would also engage in a 1 hour and 15-minute discussion group on Saturdays where we would talk about motivations, both positive and negative, experiences both positive and negative in the gym and then also outside of the gym, and as well create positive strategies for behavior change in a positive light. The reason that this was created because the discussion group was created is because it served as an environment to experiment with specific interventions that could not be induced within the gym culture or within the gym environment itself. Now, to make this happen, I had to garner the support of 2 gym facilities in Irvine, California. The first one was Next Level Fitness, who served as the private training facility. They also gave us a spot to be able to have our discussion groups. And the second was CrossFit Insanity, which was also in Irvine. These 2 gyms served as the environment in which the participants would engage in exercise by the instructors at each facility. Now, once the locations were secured, I had to gather participants. And in order to do that, I created both a website and mobile app that served as kind of a video-guided portal for prospective participants to register and also fill out all preliminary questionnaires before they would engage in the research and do the research orientation. Once I had all that, and then the stage was set, I could finally get to the field work. When gathering data, my research methods were both qualitative and quantitative. My qualitative methods included participant observation, where I would go to the gyms and be able to watch people as they exercise, notate interactions, emotional states, demeanors, conversations between members to members, participants to members, and members to trainers, just to really get an idea of how people were feeling and experiencing the gym. Next were the surveys and questionnaires. Again, that's just extra qualitative data to see kind of cognitively where people are at. Interviews with participants as well as instructors, health instructors, and then specifically for cohort 3, we had reflective journals that were assigned to the participants in the 3rd cohort. Quantitative data was body measurements, and that would include BMI, body fat percentage, circumference measurements, weight, and as well as resting heart rate and blood pressure. And then quantitatively as well, to see how many sessions were successfully completed compared to the amount of sessions they had allotted for them. When answering the post-workout survey question, how did you feel before your workout? These are the answers that he put. Week 1, he put ready to work out. Week 2, he put a little fatigue. Week 3, he put, okay, a fatigue. Week 4, drained. Now, the next question that was asked of him was, how do you feel after your workout? These are all his responses from week 4. Very interesting. I feel that I'm not as far as I should be in the workout session. I thought I was stronger than the last time. Nope. I felt I needed to do better. So the question is, how does one move past invalidating despair? In my opinion, Albert Bandura's social cognitive theory is the best multidimensional method to approach behavioral change. It posits that human behavior is a function of interaction between environmental, behavioral, and cognitive factors. It suggests that these factors interact to influence a person's sense of self-esteem and the ability to succeed. This is also known as self-efficacy. Now, expanding on this theory, as I look through all my research, I've begun to piece together the beginnings of what I believe to be the 7 pillars of exercise efficiency, or the 7 pillars of empowerment through self-efficacy. These 7 pillars have consistently shown up through this research, and they are extremely valuable in creating an environment that creates positive response and consistency. Self-compassion is the ability to understand that, hey, failure is part of the process. People get demotivated, such as Brandon felt. Failure, he felt like he was not able to achieve his goal. The next is pragmatism, understanding that, hey, let's set some realistic goals rather than I lost 50 pounds in 2 weeks. It says results are typical in the bottom. Let's remember that it takes time to move through these things. Engagement, the level of engagement you have when you're exercising, just as when you engage, you burn more calories. Community, social support, working with other people. The people in our discussion groups actually had dinner together. They started to create a social support system, as well as training. The trainer served a huge role, especially for Brandon. He was extremely empowered by his trainer. The next is progressive acknowledgement, taking note of the successes that you're making, whether it's small. Linear focus, which is focusing on one thing to change rather than a whole bunch, which demotivates you. That worked for Brandon as well. And the final is correlation. It's not exercising life. Life gets crazy, exercise drops. It's one thing, and correlating them together. And it goes beyond this, but I won't have time to really discuss it. But for that, let's kind of move on and see exactly how it all works. Now, the reason I call this the empowerment environment is because I believe that the environment is what's most important. You have to have multiple interventions to be able to move people towards being successful. And the reason I use empowerment is because, simply put, those people who feel empowered, whether intrinsically or extrinsically, endure and are more likely to succeed, while those who don't lose motivation and are likely to fizzle out. Going back to our participant, Brandon, I want to highlight moments of empowerment that he expressed through his own surveys and journal entries over week 4 to 7. So as we remember, he felt drained, and then now, week 5, he's ready for a workout. Week 6, all of a sudden, he realized and understands that he needs to go. And at the end of week 6, wanting a workout. Went from needing to wanting, which is a huge transition. And these are the responses that he had for after his workout in those same weeks. I was able to push myself through a tough workout. My trainer pushed me, didn't think I could have finished as well as I did without her. My trainer is always there to check up on me. She's great. This is an important one. I need to start off with a single aspect and build on that. But it takes self-discipline and control. Focusing on one aspect to a successful end will be motivation to build on. Alright, so we'll go back. Preliminary conclusions. Preliminary data suggests that the internal and external motivators work together in encouraging exercise adherence, and that creating a controlled environment that facilitates empowerment through multiple interventions, both intrinsic and extrinsic, help motivate people to continue their exercise routines. The real answers, of course, will come to fruition in October when I do my follow-up interviews with these participants to see if they're still consistent with their exercises, and really give me some good data for really what this all means. There's much to do and more data to collect, and after this research experience is complete, I desire to continue my research with coming to your application. Thank you all for your time.
So you had two groups at the beginning, two different cohorts who, one was doing personal training, the other one was doing group or CrossFit training.
Yeah.
Did you find a difference in what people who were more likely to exercise if they were in the group, or people who were more likely to exercise if they were in the individual? What was the difference between those two cohorts?
Are you talking about intrinsic versus the extrinsic motivators?
No, you had the 3 cohorts in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yes.
what was the difference in the two?
Something that I noticed specifically is personal training. It's a lot more of a psychological experience because it's a lot more of a one-on-one or 2-on-1, 3-on-1, and it's a lot more of the social support aspect where the instructor is really engaged in form and breathing. I mean, it takes it to a deeper level versus CrossFit. Everybody's enjoying the exercise. They're intense. They're moving forward, working together. However, there's not as much of a psychological, it doesn't go beyond that exercise. It doesn't go beyond, it really kind of moves the people in a more psychological aspect.
I'm still a little confused on the group that the third cohort you made.
Yeah.
What were like the specifics of like what they talked about to feel more empowered, or what was going on in that group?
I wish I had an hour and a half because this thing is amazing. But pretty much, one of the most important things that popped up was self-compassion. What we're trying to do is allow people, letting people understand that there's a difference between lapse and relapse. What happens for a lot of people when they engage in any type of program, they think that failure is failure, but the fact is that it's not. Failure is just a step towards progression. And so pretty much giving people exercises such as writing a message to yourself when you do fail. Hey, everybody fails, it's okay. What do you plan to do when you do fail? Kind of getting people to understand that it's about to happen or that it will happen, encourages them to, when they do experience, not to fall off the bandwagon, but remember that it's a part of the process. So that's one of the things that they did.
So you had that kind of graph of emotional support versus kind of over time. You showed us how like one participant kind of matched that curve. In general, do you find that most of your participants kind of match that curve, or were there other patterns?
More so would be extrinsic, people that are extrinsically motivated. What happens is, when people aren't pragmatic, and that's why that's one of the most important ones, when you don't set realistic expectations, and I think that in a lot of ways is the role of the instructor, or people to understand, even you have a society that's pressing that you can get results, and it's all time-based. fast results in time. And so our society and media is pressing this subconscious thought that you must achieve this goal by this time, if not, you're a failure. So people are purchasing over and over. So it's setting the right expectations. But a lot of people are extrinsically motivated because our society is entirely extrinsically motivated in a lot of ways.
Did you do any screening of your participants before you selected them for the cohort to see if maybe a history of competitive sports could predispose them towards sticking to your the training regime?
Yeah, I did do pre-screening, and it was, of course, limited with the amount of time that I had to really do this. I literally, thanks to the IRB, had a limited amount of time to get the information. But we did do screening to see kind of what their exercise history was, which is really, really important. And also, if they were exercised in high school, if they had competitive sports and stuff. That data will be included as I do the literature on this.
Okay, one last question.
So in your preliminary analysis, you had that relationship between rising obesity versus rising health history. Did you ever look into different confounding factors such as dietary habits? Say, there's been a rise in, say, people getting fast food.
Yes.
For example.
Yeah. All that, yes, 100%. All that information did be involved in the literature because there's so many things that have happened literally in the past, actually 3 decades, that have shifted tremendously. I mean, the type of foods, processed foods that are existing at this time, it's not that people, it's not, what happens is people say that it's solely responsibility of the person, that's why they're overweight, that's why they're unhealthy. But the fact is, no, we have to go up. If all of you guys, if I'm a teacher and 90% of you are failing a class, it doesn't mean we have bad students. There's something with me. And so in the same way, if we move up a level, we'll realize that no, there's something kind of systemic within our society that is almost promoting and setting people up for failure, which allows the fitness industry to explode at such a high rate because people are paying for things, not getting results, which means they're consistently